Something shifted today. And I don't mean in a small, forgettable way. I mean the kind of shift that you feel before you understand it. The kind that lands in your chest before your mind has even caught up. If you woke up this morning feeling slightly off, a little foggy, a little heavy, a little like the world had rearranged itself while you were sleeping, you weren't imagining it. Mercury just went retrograde. And not just any retrograde. This one is in Pisces. And if you're someone who has always felt things more deeply than others, who has always sensed things before they were explained to you, this particular retrograde was designed to find you. Most people are going to spend the next 3 weeks confused, frustrated, wondering why their plans keep falling apart, why their words keep getting twisted, why people they trust keep saying things that don't quite add up. They're going to blame bad luck. They're going to blame timing. They're going to blame each other. But not you. Because by the time this video is over, you're going to understand exactly what's happening, exactly why it's happening to you specifically, and exactly what this retrograde is trying to unlock inside of you before March 20th arrives and everything changes again. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share is something most people won't hear anywhere else. Let me be honest with you about something right away. Mercury retrograde has become one of the most misunderstood, most joked about, most oversimplified events in the spiritual community. You've seen the memes. You've heard people blame everything from a broken coffee maker to a failed relationship on Mercury retrograde. And while some of that is fair, this transit genuinely does shake things up. The joke version of Mercury retrograde is nothing compared to what's really going on beneath the surface. Here's the truth. Mercury is the planet that governs how we think, how we speak, how we process information, how we connect with other people, and how we move through the world. When Mercury goes direct, moving forward, life flows. Communication feels natural, decisions come easily, the words you say land the way you intend them to. But when Mercury appears to move backward, which is what retrograde means, all of that slows down. Not because the universe wants to punish you, not because something is broken, but because life is asking you to stop, to look backward before you can move forward, to review what you've been skipping over, what you've been rushing past, what you've been pretending you don't see. Think of it like this. Imagine driving down a highway at full speed. You've got somewhere to be, you're focused on what's ahead, and then suddenly the car in front of you slows down. Traffic crawls to a stop. And in that moment of forced stillness, you look out the window and you notice something you've passed 100 times but never actually seen. A field, a building, a sign that somehow you always missed. That is Mercury retrograde. It slows down the highway of your life just long enough for you to see what you've been driving past. And right now, in Pisces, one of the most emotionally deep and spiritually charged signs in the entire zodiac, what you're about to see might change you in ways that no amount of forward motion ever could. Not all Mercury retrogrades are created equal. The sign that Mercury retrogrades in completely changes the flavor, the focus, and the force of what you're about to experience. And this one, Mercury retrograde in Pisces, is unlike anything most people have felt in years. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It holds all 12 signs within it. It's the place where everything ends, everything dissolves, and everything that was hidden finally floats to the surface. Pisces rules the subconscious mind, the dream world, the invisible layer of reality that exists just beneath what we can see and touch. So when Mercury, the planet of the mind and communication, goes retrograde in Pisces, something very specific happens. The boundary between what you consciously know and what you've buried deep inside begins to thin. Things that you've tucked away start surfacing: memories, feelings, truths, realizations that your waking mind has been too busy or too afraid to look at directly. And here is what makes this retrograde even charged than usual. Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, the planet of dreams and spiritual fog, just made a massive move. After 14 years of living in Pisces, Neptune has finally shifted into Aries, which means the fog that has been hanging over your life, that slow, dreamy, confusing energy that may have made the last several years feel like you were moving through water, is finally beginning to lift. But before it clears completely, Mercury is going back through Pisces one final time, like someone sweeping a room before closing the door forever. And everything that Mercury finds, every unresolved feeling, every unspoken truth, every dream you quietly abandoned, is going to come back to the surface between now and March 20th. This isn't meant to scare you. This is meant to prepare you. Because what rises to the surface during this retrograde isn't punishment, it's clarity. It's the universe handing you a final audit of your emotional world before an entirely new chapter begins. And the people who pay attention, who stay present, who don't numb themselves, who choose to look at what comes up rather than push it back down, those people are going to walk out of this retrograde lighter, clearer, and more aligned than they've felt in years. I want to talk to you directly for a moment. Not to a general audience, not to everyone who might stumble across this video, but to the specific kind of person who finds themselves drawn to content like this. Because that tells me something about you. You are not someone who moves through life on autopilot. You are not someone who accepts surface-level explanations for things. You've always had a sense, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes wonderful, that there is more happening beneath the visible surface of life than most people acknowledge. You've felt things before they happened. You've known things before you could explain how you knew them. And sometimes that sensitivity has felt like a gift, and sometimes it has felt like a weight. Mercury retrograde in Pisces was built for people like you. Because Mercury retrograde in Pisces doesn't affect everyone the same way. People who live entirely on the surface, who are ruled completely by logic, schedule, and routine, will experience this retrograde as an annoying inconvenience. Technology glitches, missed emails, miscommunications with coworkers. Frustrating but forgettable. But for the people who live with one foot in the seen world and one foot in the unseen world, for the ones who feel energy in rooms, who carry other people's emotions long after those people have left, who find themselves thinking about someone hours before that person reaches out, this retrograde goes somewhere much deeper. It goes into the heart. It reaches into the places you've been protecting, the grief you told yourself you were over, the longing you convinced yourself was gone, the version of yourself you quietly put away because life got complicated and practical and you thought you didn't have room for her anymore. She's coming back. Not to overwhelm you, not to break you, but to remind you of something you've been too busy to remember. That the most important journey happening in your life right now isn't external. It's not the job, the relationship, the plan, the goal. The most important thing happening right now is the conversation between who you've become and who you were always supposed to be. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is the space where that conversation finally gets to happen.
Now I want to get specific, because spiritual content that stays vague doesn't actually help you. So let me tell you the 3 things that Mercury retrograde in Pisces is most likely to bring to the surface in your life, and what each one actually means. The first thing is old relationships resurfacing. During this retrograde, don't be surprised if someone from your past suddenly reappears. A text from someone you haven't heard from in months, a memory of someone you thought you'd moved on from, a dream so vivid it stays with you all day. This isn't random. Mercury retrograde in Pisces has a way of reopening doors that you thought were closed. But here is the most important thing to understand. Just because a door reopens doesn't mean you're meant to walk back through it. Sometimes the universe brings someone back not as an invitation to reconnect, but as a test. A test to see whether you've actually healed what you thought you healed. A test to see whether the boundary you set is real, or if it collapses the moment that person shows up again. Pay attention to how you feel, not just what you think. Your mind will have explanations, your gut will have the truth. The second thing this retrograde will surface is unfinished creative or professional work. Pisces rules creativity, dreams, and vision, and when Mercury goes retrograde here, it has a specific habit of bringing old ideas back to life. The project you abandoned, the business idea you dismissed as unrealistic, the creative work you started and then quietly gave up on when life got complicated. These things are resurfacing for a reason, not because you need to restart them immediately. Retrograde is not the time for launching new things, but because there is something in those unfinished chapters that still belongs to you. A skill you haven't fully used, a vision you haven't fully honored, an identity you left behind that actually deserves to come with you into what's next. And the third thing, perhaps the most important, is the truth about what you've been tolerating. Mercury retrograde in Pisces has this remarkable and sometimes uncomfortable ability to make the things you've been settling for suddenly feel intolerable. Situations that you've made peace with, relationships where you've been giving more than you're receiving, environments where you've been shrinking yourself to fit, commitments that stopped feeding you a long time ago, they start to feel different. Heavier, more obvious, harder to rationalize. And this isn't the retrograde making you dramatic. This is the retrograde making you clear. Because sometimes we need our tolerance to run out before we're willing to make the changes we've been postponing. When something stops feeling acceptable this month, pay attention. That feeling is information. Before I continue, I want to take a moment to share something from the community. Someone recently said something that stopped me completely. They said, "I kept waiting to feel ready, and then I realized the waiting was the reason I wasn't." That is one of the most honest things I've read in a long time, because readiness is something we tend to think arrives before the moment. But in reality, readiness is something that arrives in the moment, in the second you decide, in the breath right before you say yes. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is going to show a lot of people this truth, that the life they wanted was never on the other side of readiness. It was on the other side of the decision they kept postponing. Thank you for sharing that. Let's get practical, because understanding what this retrograde means is only half the work. The other half is knowing how to move through it wisely. The first thing, and this is the most important thing I can tell you, is to slow down your communication intentionally. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is notorious for creating misunderstandings, not because people become less intelligent, but because the emotional charge behind words becomes so amplified that what you say and what people hear can be two completely different things. Something you say casually lands like a blow. Something meant with love gets interpreted as criticism. So during this retrograde, take an extra moment before you respond to messages that feel charged. Reread important emails before you send them. If a conversation feels like it's escalating in a strange direction, step back and ask, is this really about what we're saying, or is there something else under the surface that neither of us is naming? The second thing is to let yourself remember. Pisces is deeply connected to the past, not in a stuck, nostalgic way, but in a way that allows wisdom to surface from old experiences. During this retrograde, you might find yourself thinking about people and moments and versions of yourself that you haven't visited in a long time. Let that happen. Don't scroll past it. Don't distract yourself out of it. Sit with what comes up. Journal it. Let the emotion move through you rather than holding it at arm's length. Because the things that surface during Mercury retrograde in Pisces are not there to drag you backward. They're there to complete something. And completion is what prepares you for what's next. The third thing is to protect your energy more carefully than usual. Pisces energy is extraordinarily porous. It absorbs. And when Mercury goes retrograde here, your energetic field becomes more sensitive than it usually would. This means the people and environments around you have more impact on your internal state than they typically would. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with certain people, after certain conversations, after consuming certain content. If something consistently leaves you feeling drained, foggy, or emotionally heavy, that is information. You are allowed to create distance. You are allowed to protect your peace, not because you're weak, because you're paying attention. And the fourth thing is this. Do not make major permanent decisions during this retrograde if you can avoid it. This isn't about living in fear, it's about respecting the energy of the moment. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is the universe's way of saying, not yet. Process first, clarify first, let the fog lift before you decide where to go. Decisions made in clarity land differently than decisions made in the middle of a storm. Wait for March 20th and then move. I want to leave you with something that I think is genuinely important to hold on to during the next 3 weeks. This retrograde is not happening in isolation. It is one piece of a much larger movement that began at the start of this year and will continue to build momentum through the middle of 2026. We are in a period of collective recalibration, where old systems are dissolving, old patterns are losing their grip, and the people who are willing to do the inner work are positioning themselves for something that most people won't even recognize as an opportunity. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is asking you to do the most important kind of preparation. Not the kind that shows up on a resume, not the kind you can post about, the kind that happens in silence. In the journal entry at midnight, in the moment you finally say out loud, even just to yourself, what you have been afraid to acknowledge. That is the work of this retrograde, and it is not small work. It is not comfortable work, but it is the work that everything else is built on. The people who will make the most meaningful moves in the second half of 2026 are the ones doing this work right now, not launching, not performing, not forcing. Just getting radically honest with themselves about who they are, what they need, and what they are no longer willing to carry forward. You are in that group. The fact that you're here, watching this, letting these words land, that tells me you are someone who takes your inner life seriously. And in a world that constantly pushes you to go faster, produce more, and perform endlessly, that is genuinely rare. So, as you move through this retrograde, move gently. Let what needs to surface, surface. Let what needs to release, go. And trust that on the other side of this, on March 20th, when Mercury stations direct and life begins to flow forward again, you will have something that can't be rushed, bought, or borrowed. You will have clarity. And clarity changes everything. That's everything for today. If this resonated with you, if something I said landed in a way that felt personal, drop a comment below. Tell me what's coming up for you during this retrograde. I read every single one. And if you're new here, welcome to the Waking Soul. This is a space for people who feel things deeply and want to understand why. subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because Mercury retrograde in Pisces is just the beginning of what this season is about to reveal. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.